Hello, everyone. My name is Maurice Altaf, and I'm a productivity tools specialist with SolidCAD. What that means is that I like to understand and assess your design workflow in Revit and help you improve it with CTC's productivity tools. I also have with me Sean Zerbis, who's a technical evangelist at CTC Software. SolidCAD is basically a platinum reseller of Autodesk products. And besides the Autodesk offerings, we partner with companies to provide you with tools to better your workflow. SolidCAD can train on all of the products we sell, offer scan to BIM services, and consult your BIM needs. We have representation all over Canada with 12 training facilities authorized by Autodesk and CanBIM. Complimentary Solid Assist and technical support for all of our clients is available. We also partner with various different associations such as CanBIM, Toronto BIM Community, and sponsor events that bring together like-minded professionals. Today we will take a look at CTC software, and specifically one of which is a BIM Batch Suite. Sean will explain the batching and scheduling process of these tools and how it can save you time dwelling on tedious tasks. Sean, take it away.
Thank you, Muhiz. Well, as said, my name is Sean Zerbis, and I want to be talking to you today about one of our suites that really helps to automate certain workflows in our day-to-day Revit usage. In fact, a lot of these things we want to automate in mass or process in a way that's kind of batching, hence the name of the suite, so that you can really streamline what it is you're trying to do. And we're going to be focusing on importing and exporting data and also cleaning up certain aspects of project work. This suite really is meant for Revit users who are pretty experienced in Revit. I mean, if you're new to Revit, this suite may not entirely be for you, though there may be people in your firm where this is meant for them. This is, however, used by firms of all sizes. That's important. So even if you're a small firm, this suite can be a huge, huge benefit for you in your daily workflows. So I'm going to go through and talk about the tools. There's 5 primary tools in the Batch Suite, and I'm going to lightly demonstrate some of the functionality. So to kind of let you know exactly what we're going to go over, all of our major suites have free and licensed tools. I'm going to show you in the Batch Suite how you can identify those. I'm going to talk about the top most popular tools, with 5 of the tools being in there. 4 of them are actually pretty popular, so we'll talk about those. I want to make sure you have a really solid idea of how you can get your hands on the suite. So if you like what you're seeing today and you want to try to use this in your firm, I want to show you how you can get it. And then also, I want to have a small discussion on how you can deploy this in case you want to roll this out to a lot of users across your firm. And since I'm not big on death by PowerPoint, I want to go directly into Revit and show this to you live. I also want to mention, while we're inside of Revit, well, if you have any questions whatsoever about what I'm talking about, I encourage you to throw that into the questions window, and I'll do my best to answer them live, or I'll also be saving time at the end to answer a bunch of questions there. But don't be shy. Feel free to just throw the questions in live to this webinar chat window. So we're talking exclusively today about the CTC BIM Batch Suite. You can see there's 5 primary tools sitting here. In previous webinars, and you can go back and review them on the SolidCAD channel, we've already talked about the Project Suite. We've already talked about the Manager Suite. Both of those tool sets are fantastic, and today we're covering exclusively this one here, the Batch Suite. Now, as I mentioned, there are free tools in all of our suites and licensed tools. In some cases, you can see them very distinctly, light green versus dark green or light blue versus dark blue. I know in my case, my eyes have a little bit of a difficulty seeing this, but we do have light purple icons here. These two tools are free. And then to the right side, we've got these darker colored icons. Those 3 tools are licensed tools. Now, When I show you how to get your hands on this suite, you can certainly try this out for 14 days, completely license-free, basically. You can do everything this suite can offer 100% for 14 days. After the 14 days, the licensed tools, if you haven't purchased a full license, they'll stop working, but the free tools will continue to work forever. That's a major aspect of the suite, and there's some really good value here. So let me explain what these tools do. Family Exporter is a tool set that's designed to help you save families from your project out to a network directory structure or to your computer someplace. And I'll explain more about that here in a minute, but basically it saves families out of your project. The reverse of that then is the tool here, Family Loader. You can reload those back in. I very frequently use these two free tools in collaboration with our BIM Manager suite after maybe I've gone through and done some repair on the content. So I might export a bunch of families out. I might use a tool from another suite to repair them, and then I'll turn right back around with the batch suite and load them back into a project or a series of projects or families. So I can use these two tools in collaboration in that workflow. The first paid tool here is called Plotter and Exporter. This tool will allow you to set up rules, or you can explicitly pick things in your project or set up rules for things in your project that you need to dump out to other file formats like PDF or directly to a printer, maybe kicking out DWGs for your consulting engineers that maybe aren't in Revit to be able to leverage, or Navisworks files, or you name it. If you're kicking files out of Revit on a regular basis, this tool can help you automate that, either on demand for a project that I have open, or you can actually schedule that and you can have it call up that export in the future. Maybe say tonight at 6:30, I want this tool set to open up a series of projects in the proper version of Revit and do some things, do some exports. This tool can help you with that. So that way you can be more or less hands-free. The tool right below that is called the Project and Family Upgrader. Now, I don't do a lot of project upgrading on a regular basis, but when I do, it's kind of frustrating because I have to open up the main project and I have to open up all of the links, and each one of those likes to upgrade temporarily the links that are loaded in that aren't yet upgraded, and that whole process takes time, but I have to go through and open them all up. If it's central files, open them up detached, save them to a new location, update their names. That whole process takes a lot of time. And once a year, when I'm upgrading my entire family library, when Autodesk releases the new version, like coming up here in a few months, Autodesk will most likely be releasing Revit 2021. Yeah, because we have 2020 right now. So yeah, 2021 in a couple of months here, I'll have to go through my family library, my corporate family library, and upgrade all of those families and potentially do some maintenance to them, but at least upgrade them. And this tool is a light way to go through and do some family upgrading to get that entire library move forward. If you have some of our other suites, another tool you might use in replacement of the family portion is Family Processor to actually do some correction. But if you don't have that suite and you wanted to go just with the BIM Batch Suite, the Family Upgrader can be a very meaningful tool to aid in that workflow. So projects and families both can be upgraded with this tool. And then there's the Project Processor down here. This is a brand new tool on the BIM Batch Suite. It was released just a few months ago. And it's still undergoing a few changes and some improvements based on user feedback, but right now it's incredibly powerful. I keep referencing back to the Manager Suite because in a lot of cases, the Batch Suite helps to automate or complement workflows up there. In the case of the Project Processor, there's some things we talked about in a previous webinar for cleaning up your project and modifying how imports and links are handled and swapping types and doing some parameter corrections and things like that. The Project Processor can have a rule set configured to batch a lot of that. Not all of it, but certainly a lot of it, and it can really save time. It's also an incredibly powerful tool set that doesn't ask any questions of you once you tell it to go. So when I was mentioning earlier about how this tool is this suite here as a whole generally is a bit more advanced, this is the tool primarily that I'm referring to, this one in the Project and Family Upgrader, because it doesn't ask questions. It just does what you tell it to do. So let's go take a look at some of these tools and investigate through what they can do for you live. Like I said, if you have any questions about these tools, feel free to throw them in the questions window and we'll try to answer them live while we're going through them. So let's first talk about the Family Exporter. Before I dig into this tool, I want to show you the native Revit way for how you can save families out. If I scroll down in my project environment, and I've got families loaded in here, if I need to harvest those for some reason, let's say I wanted to go to my doors, and there's a certain number of doors here that I want to save out. There's a few of them actually, like doors interior double flush and exterior and bifold, and a couple of these doors. I want to save these out of my project. Well, if I highlight multiple families in this case, and I right-click on them, I do not get the option to save, which is kind of frustrating sometimes. I can select just one and save them out one at a time. And what will happen when I do this is Revit will remember the path from which it was originally loaded and try to path me there. That may not be where I want this going. So then I have to re-browse to the correct location each time I'm saving these out. Unfortunately, I can't take an entire category and save it out. Revit doesn't facilitate that. It doesn't have that kind of functionality. I do have the ability to go up to families and save all families out in one big step. The problem with this, in my opinion, this is definitely an opinion-based thing, but in my opinion, this save is really frustrating because it takes every single family and saves it all out to one unorganized directory. So annotation symbols are sitting next to doors or sitting next to detail items are all sitting together, and sometimes it can be a little tricky to identify what's what and how I'm supposed to be handling that content. And in most cases, that's way more than I need. So instead of using the methods that exist here inside of Revit, what I'm going to do is use the family exporter. This tool will allow me to be very selective. I can search for things. I can say, find me stuff like single, and it'll look through my entire family list and find me things that somehow match single in case that was something that I needed. Or I can specifically take a category of objects and export all of those. Maybe I want all of my doors and all of my windows to be saved out somehow. I can do that. Or if I want to be a little more picky, I can tell it, let's not do all of the doors, but let's pick specifically some of these that I know to be problematic. Let's see, where are they here? Yeah, we got door revolving, not that one. Door bifold, exterior, interior, opening, and opening arc. Maybe these 4 doors don't follow my typical naming conventions, and therefore maybe I want to pull them out of this project or save them out someplace. So I have the ability to be very specific, and I can tell it exactly where I want it to go. I tell it the folder, and I tell it within that folder how it's going to organize these. In my case, I have chosen geometry and category because if I was up here in the top and selecting things like doors and maybe windows, and maybe I've got some wall tags and some view titles and some title blocks that I'm all kicking out, some of these things are annotation type categories, and some of them are model type categories. And so it's going to organize it by annotation or model, and then underneath that, organize it by category. So in this case, it would be exporting 22 families and saving them to my desktop into a folder called New Folder. Or I could be telling it to save to Project X, Family Export Directory, or something like that, and then use some other tools to automate the correction of some of those families. Once I've gone through and exported these, again, I would automate the correction, doing something to fix a bunch of families or whatever in that environment, and then I would turn right back around and use this tool here, Family Loader. This one does effectively the exact opposite. What I do is I give it a whole list of families and I say, open those families up. So I would say add a series of families to a list. Maybe I browse this out to, maybe I have some on my desktop. Let's go take a look here. Yeah, we'll grab some of these families. Let's grab just some Herman Miller content. So I can grab some of this content here, add that to a list and tell it that I want to add those into a series of projects. I can add a series of host projects or families. In case these were nested families, I could reload them into their host family. Or if they were the main families, I might want to reload them into a project. So I could give them a series of projects to load into. And if this project set is something that I'm loading into regularly, or this family list is something that I'm reloading regularly, I can actually save those 2 lists independent of each other and choose to open up those lists. So if in the future I need to make some additional corrections and then republish them back to projects again, I can do that. There's some really nice switches inside this tool, like only reloading families if they were already in the host file. So if I'm trying to reload these Herman Miller seating components or cart components, if they didn't already exist in the projects I was targeting, then it wouldn't reload them. It only reloads them if they were already there. This way I don't balloon file sizes. There are times, however, when I'm trying to forcibly load some things that I want people to use and I know they're not in there already. I can actually tell it to load the families even if they're not already in there. And this has a little warning here. This could potentially increase the file size in an unwanted way if you're loading a whole bunch of stuff. But in this case, I have 5 selected. I can also tell it when I'm processing these files, if they're work sharing enabled projects, I would be pointing this to a central file. It could know to automatically create a new local copy for that, begin the reload process of these families into that project, automatically suppressing the overwrite dialog box if it already exists, and making some choices about how it's supposed to be overwriting it, whether it's overwriting the existing version and its parameter values for those definitions, or just overwriting the main definition of the family, depending on what's appropriate. So I have that kind of control. And then when it's all done, because I'm automating this, again, this is a batch suite, this can automatically save those files, the central files, after loading the families. It can, when it's doing the save, automatically also sync to central and relinquish all control of those elements, and then close those open host files, which in most cases for project models would probably be a local copy. So it'll open up a local, it'll load the families, suppressing the overwrite dialog. It'll then save that local, it'll sync to central and relinquish control, and it'll close that file and move on to the next one. So in a hurry, you could go through, export a bunch of families, fix them however you deem appropriate, perhaps with the manager suite, and then turn right back around and reload them back into a series of projects to make sure everything across a model or a series of models is all consistent. Great way of making sure your libraries are nice, neat, and clean, and your projects are listening to them, to that content. And for 2 free tools, that's a lot of functionality that you can get that can save you a lot of time. Now let's take a look at the first licensed tool. Before I dig into that, you might notice here in my sheets list in Revit that this is organized how Revit normally would organize things, alphabetically. So I've got my A sheets first, since this is an architectural model. I have some architectural demolition sheets. I have some architectural existing sheets. And then I have a title sheet. I also have some placeholder sheets down below for some of my structural document set. Probably wouldn't be modeled here, but I have a couple of placeholders that I've put into my model. Well, here's the trick about this. When Revit prints these things, and when most other automated tools print these things, they print in the order Revit lists them. That really isn't what I want, though. If I'm going to do something like a multi-sheet PDF where it's already all grouped together, I may want to have my title sheet first. In fact, I probably want to have my title sheet first. And then if I'm including my structural sheets, I would probably want to have my structural existing document set, structural demolition stuff if this is an existing project with demolition, then my structural new. And then similarly, for my architectural, I'd have architectural existing, then demo, and then new. And every single time I do print sets, if I'm doing multi-sheet PDFs, I have to post-process those and resort my sheets myself, because Revit and most other print engines don't know how to handle that. Now, if I'm creating individual PDFs, one PDF per sheet, that's not an issue. But in a lot of cases, I like the multi-sheet because it gives me one file to send and one file to maintain differences, and it's very easily cross-linkable. So let's take a look at how the plotter exporter can help me with that, but also help me at the same time with the process of potentially dumping out things like I have some 3D views for Navisworks exports. I might want to save those out. I have some 3D views here for exporting out my site for my civil engineers. And I also have some export views here in 2D, both in floor plans and in ceiling plans. And I always have to remember to go through all of those and export them individually. Well, maybe there's a better way, so I could actually just tell it to do it. Well, quick demo would be me opening up Plotter Exporter. It's going to refresh based on all of my settings, and I could effectively, once it's refreshed, just tell it to run now on my active project. And if I do that running now on my current project, it'll take all the rules that I've pre-configured and just do it. And I could walk away and grab lunch or grab a cup of coffee or whatever the case may be. But let's take a look at how this is actually configured so that you can understand why I can just click run now and walk away, or why I could schedule this tool and tell this to run after hours based on the rules that I've configured. So here in the Plotter Exporter, I have already gone through the exercise of configuring my PDFs, my DWGs, and my Navisworks exports. I've told it exactly what I want it to do. I've told it exactly what my wildcard searches are, and I've already dropped them over here, and I've told it exactly how it's supposed to export these things like my PDFs, which PDF printer to use, which print settings from my model, how it's supposed to create my files here, in this case creating multiple, a multi-sheet PDF, keeping the pages sorted how I want and how to name it. All of that's been set up, and even right on down to the selection here of what export settings I want. In this case, I have a bunch of ATG things. Let's remove these and let's put SolidCAD selections in here instead. So I've just removed all of my PDF print set here. If I expand out my sheets individually, I can see that I have the individual sheets listed. But if I go and do individual sheets, when a user creates a new one, I have to micromanage this here in this environment, and I don't really want to do that. So instead, I have a wildcard search library set up. And my wildcard searches are set up in my template so that when I'm doing certain processes for a client, maybe I'm doing SolidCAD work, or maybe I'm doing somebody else's work or whatever, I can know what that rule set already is going to be and know exactly what it's supposed to do. So if I removed all of these settings and I was to say, hey, for all of my views, let's have a SolidCAD CAD export here for my DWGs. I can just drop this over. And what this is actually doing is looking for all views in my project where the view type is anything. It doesn't matter what it is. I have basically it's a fairly generic rule, but it's looking for a parameter called view type, and it has to be equal to export CAD. If I test this right now, it's going to look through all of my views in my project and find me a 3D view called Site Export CAD. It's going to find the plan view that I showed you earlier. That's called Site Export CAD for plan. And it has a bunch of ceiling plans for some of my consulting engineers, like my sprinkler consultants, who maybe aren't in Revit. And so I can take all these views and have them pre-known to be dumped out to a CAD environment. So it knows to find them and to dump them out. I also have a SolidCAD Navis export, so it knows to take this project and look for some certain properties. Once again, it's looking for all views of any name. In this case, I'm directly filtering for some 3D views where the view type equals export Navis. And once again, I can test this, and I've got my model pre-broken apart, pre-filtered inside the Revit model to know exactly what the individual NWC files are going to be, or NWD files are going to be. So with this, I can simply drop this into my Navisworks export over here. And again, I've already configured my settings, and I'll show those to you in a minute, a little bit about how this can be configured, but I've already configured that. For the PDFs, again, I had done this already, but let's do this again. I want to have my general sheet be first. I'm actually grabbing specifically this wildcard that I've already created called Sheets General, which is looking for some just sheets in my project that have a discipline that equals general. That's what it's specifically searching for. And it's going to find just the one, my G00 title sheet right there. So I've already got that added. I also want to make sure I get all my structural sheets added across here. So I could drop those in, and I want my architectural sheets added as well. I can drop those in. In fact, I could have added those all together. I dropped that into the wrong place. That was my fault. Let's actually remove these, and let's add them back across again to the correct location. There we go. And I want to have my general be at the very top. I want structural existing next. This is important if I'm doing a multi-sheet PDF. My architectural I want next. So I've got this now all configured and sorted in the order that I want. And all of these wildcards know what they're looking for already because I've pre-built that for my users. Now if I want to make sure that it's dumping this out to a PDF correctly, I've chosen the correct PDF printer, and this will automatically filter for Bluebeam or Adobe or whatever PDF printers you've got. I've told it where to export to, and this can very easily be a relative location if I'm processing multiple projects. This can understand exactly how to go to that project's directory. This knows to automatically create a dated subfolder inside that PDF folder. In this case, I'm telling it to keep the pages in the order selected, but let's try something different. Let's say I don't care about the order. I just want all these PDFs to be individual PDFs. So I can say create separate files. And when I do that, I can go over here to my sheets, and I can directly build up exactly what I want my naming conventions to be. From my project information over here, maybe I care about what the project number is and the project name. So I can have those two things put together here in my file name for the PDF, and you can see a little example down here at the bottom. This will actually read my project information. And from the sheet properties, maybe I care about the sheet number and the sheet name. And so I can have those kicked out. And maybe I also care about what the current date is. So I can use the processing date as a part of the field. So when I save these out, if I'm saving out a bunch of PDFs, people can understand what the timestamp or date stamp in this case was on that. And if I did care to, I could even get down to a timestamp, because this does have processing time included as well. So I can use the time in that process. And you can control how you want your date formatted. You can see here, I like year, month, day, which is what I've chosen up here. But you can certainly change that to whatever you feel is appropriate for your schemas for how you want to date and timestamp those. So that's one way you can do this. But again, in my case, I like combining it together. So when I combine together all at once, I just use the project number and project name, and the sheet number is no longer relevant because they're all in one big file. And yes, I do stamp my files with a processing date. So when I send them to outside users of this, they can understand basically what version this was, what the iteration of my model this is. These exact same kinds of rules, I can apply these same things to my DWG exports. And I have options specific to DWGs, like what DWG layering settings I want, or if I was doing DGN, what DGN leveling settings I wanted. And I can even do custom configurations here if I want to, and fully configure this live in this environment so it knows exactly what to use. And naming as well, things like project number and name, the view type, the view name, whatever you think is appropriate. Navisworks, same game. So once you've got this all configured, if you want to distribute this around your firm, you can simply save this, and then other users can open this up and leverage this so that once you've put the work in as a BIM manager, anybody else can get their hands on it. Or if you're an end user, maybe you don't know how to configure this stuff all yourself, somebody else can configure it for you, and you can simply open up those settings and then run this directly on your project. Makes it real easy to create very repeatable print sets. In a lot of cases, we're doing these things all entirely manually. But you saw earlier, when I first opened up this tool, I should hit yes to that. Yes, save my settings. When I open up this plotter exporter tool here, it's going to remember my settings from last time. It loads up all the things that I've asked it to do, and I can simply click Run Now and walk away and let it do a thing. Or, again, I can schedule it for some after-hours processing using my saved settings for these rules and telling it which files to apply those settings to. Okay, final tool that we're going to cover in depth today, at some depth, is the project processor. This is that brand new tool, and I think I've saved the best for last. For those of you who are BIM manager types, those of you who go through and do a lot of project cleanup repetitively, or maybe you've decided to change your standards in some fashion, and you want to go back through previous projects and make them conform to the new standards. That's a very manual process in most cases. But this project processor, you can actually go through and set up the rules by which a project is supposed to be processed. And you can go through and tell it what it's exactly supposed to do. So what I'm going to do is bring the project processor across onto the main screen because it was on my other monitor. I can tell this to process either an active project, like my currently open project in the background, or I can give it a whole bunch of files. So I don't have to open up each one manually. I can tell it to open and process them individually. And I can also go through the Processes tab here and tell it exactly what I want it to do. When I'm processing a whole bunch of projects, each project, each Revit model, is a file to be processed. And for each file, I can have it run a script before it actually processes it, like a VB script or like a batch script if you want to copy and do some things. Then I can run through and do all the stuff to that file that I want to do. And then when I'm all done, I can run a postscript at the end to actually do some more things. Sometimes I've had people run a script to copy a file to a specific location, then process it, and then take that copied file and load it up to an FTP site for distribution, or archive it, or do something with it. So you can actually automate archival processes or submission processes to give this file to outside firms, and you can have it automatically cleaned with a rule set. Now, what are those rules? Well, if I jump down here to the clean area, if I check the box to clean, this is like doing stuff like removing sheets. and I can remove sheets from my project based on rules. If I'm an architecture firm and I want to send this to maybe a contractor, perhaps I don't want them having the sheets that exist in my project. In fact, I may not want them to have most of my views at all. I want to clean a lot of this stuff out so that they get just the main building model, and I've already given them, or will be giving them, because maybe I'm processing with Plotter and Exporter, maybe I'm going through the exercise of printing a bunch of PDFs, then I want to take and archive this project, make it a distribution project, and then strip it out, clean a bunch of things out of it. So I can go through the exercise of cleaning sheets, and I can add to this rule set. I can say, just delete all sheets. It doesn't matter if they're used or if they're empty, delete all of them. Or if I was doing a lightweight cleanup, perhaps I'm doing archiving of a project, but I want to keep the sheets, I could say delete empty sheets. I could delete empty sheets by rules. Find sheets that have certain properties with certain values. Like if the sheet discipline is such and such, do a thing with it. Maybe if it's like structural for my sheet discipline. And it's actually sourcing these properties from my active project here in the background. So when I process, if I have this based on my company standard, this can save me a lot of time. I can do something similar for views. In this case, by the way, I'm going to delete all sheets. All sheets regardless of value here. So I don't care if it's structure or anything else. It's going to delete everything no matter what. I really don't care what those properties are. So there we go. For the views, if I'm cleaning this up for giving out, again, to an outside firm, I might add some rules to delete all, certain kinds of views of certain disciplines or certain views of certain types. Maybe I want to delete all 3D views, no matter what. Maybe I want to delete all floor plan views that follow certain rules, or maybe that are not something. So I can go through and write that rule set up here, telling it that if the view name or view discipline or view type is something, then use that in a certain fashion. Like if it's, I don't have any view type names used here. View type here, we'll use that. There we go. So if it's a floor plan, do a thing, or if it's some other property, I can go through and leverage those in this rule set here. Actually, I think it's this guy here. There we go. Yeah. If it's a code plan, delete it. Right. If it's a ceiling plan, delete it. If it's this other kind of plan, delete it. And so I can go through and have those rules pre-built up. I'm going to configure this once, thinking about all the things that I would want to do to clean stuff out of my project. And then once I have it configured, I would save this. That way I don't have to keep doing this process over and over again. There's some other things you can do. You can add in the deletion of certain line styles from your project. So if I know that there's certain things like A-star or anno-whatever, I can get rid of those things. Detail, whatever. If I want to get rid of all detail, everything kind of line styles, I can clean those things up. I can remove parameters. I can remove images or linked files or imports or all kinds of stuff. Delete viewport types. Delete dimension. Oh, by the way, Revit natively, you can't actually delete viewport types. This tool here can actually go through and help you clean up viewport types that have made their way into your project or your project template. There's no other real way on Revit to get rid of these. This can actually help you with that. Now, sometimes, by the way, if I'm doing some general like project maintenance, I might not want to delete everything straight away. I might want to swap stuff first. So I can actually drag these things around and I can call some swap commands to swap line styles from one, let me check the box here, swap line styles from one definition to another. I can say find things that are a detail such and such and replace them with this other style. And then I can come through and actually clean out those line style definitions after the fact. So again, I have control about the order in which these operations happen as well. Those of you who may have seen our BIM Manager Suite, we have a tool called Type Swapper. This swap tab here, you can set up the rules to automate that type swapping stuff live in a bunch of projects all at once. So again, that can save you a lot of time and then cleaning that stuff up after the fact. If I was doing a massive clean of this project, I'm deleting a bunch of things, I can run that process and then directly come in here and tell it to purge. Purge all families, purge all system families. If I'm being a little more surgical, maybe I'm cleaning things explicitly, cleaning certain line styles, and I don't want to just purge all line styles or purge all line patterns if I'm being a bit more surgical. But you can directly go in here and say, purge everything. And this thing will purge until there's nothing left to purge in here for things that are unused. You have that control. You do have the ability here, and also in some cases, to do some rename processes. And again, depending on what my cleanup process is, I might be renaming before I choose to swap or clean, because then I can guarantee that certain names might exist, and then I can swap things out for other stuff, or I can clean things that now don't match certain naming conventions. That's some rules you can do as well. And I can rename things like views, view templates, view filters, and sheets to make things comply with my standards based on a rule set. You have the ability here to do some of the parameter adding and swapping in a schedule. So if you needed to do some major project parameter work, this tool can help you with that. I can process things around links where I want to find and replace paths. If I have absolute paths on things where I want to replace with absolute paths, I can do that in a hurry. I can force this to update a bunch of links in my model, Revit links and DWG links, to correct them to my standards. All of this can be run and programmed and saved so you can use these in the future whenever is necessary. So huge time saver. The configuration takes a little bit, but then doing it manually takes a little bit. But once you've done that one time, you don't have to do it over and over and over on multiple projects. I can do the rule set and tell it how to run on a bunch of projects. All right, I've gone through all 4 of the tools that I intended to show in detail today. We're getting close to the end of our time. I haven't seen any questions roll through just yet, but I do want to open this up for questions in case you were holding off to the end to actually ask. We always want to make sure you do have the ability to ask and have a voice and get answers to those questions if you have any. Mohiz, are we seeing any questions roll in? Did you see anything that I didn't see yet?
Hey, Sean, nothing yet.
Okay, very good.
Thank you for the presentation. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And as always, we always want to make sure we do say thank you to those of you who attended as well. We always appreciate when you show up and interact with us live. Today there wasn't a lot of questions, and that's okay. If there are any, we'll stick around for a little while here. But we always want to say thank you to you because you're the reason why we write these tools. You're the end users who are leveraging Revit on a daily basis, and we're trying to help automate the things that are frustrating for you. So certainly if you have ideas, let us know. If you have ideas for future webinars, communicate that to us as well when this webinar is over. But with that, I suppose we can say thank you and shut it down for the day if there are no questions that rolled through yet.
No, nothing. I guess thank you to the attendees.
Very good.
And thank you, Sean.
Very good. Everybody have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinars.